This morning I was attempting to pray, and I went to church, and I'm trying to say these prayers. I'm trying to keep my mind in order, and it wasn't working at all. And I realized that if I began to pay attention to different sense perceptions, that my mind started to settle down. And this is what Father Narciso Irala talked about with the method of conscious sensations. And I began to kind of slow down, and then I started to feel at peace. So I was trying to pray. I was just trying to generate prayers, and it wasn't working. Then I began to look at the conscious sensations, and that was bringing me peace. Then there were some things like different thoughts and things coming into my mind that were like different temptations. And so I used what Father Narciso also talked about, just kind of putting just little thoughts in there that are just kind of like neutral thoughts, pious thoughts that kind of interrupt those temptations. Like let's say there's a temptation toward impurity. Father Narciso talks about what you do is you just kind of say, oh, like that person is a child of God. Like you just kind of say like a little thought that kind of interrupts things. But you're just relaxing into the just looking at like, okay, you're looking at the wall and you're trying to you're feeling what your foot feels like. And then you're just telling yourself these kind of relaxing things that kind of break these kind of fearful anticipatory things that we kind of, when we get into temptation, we're like, oh no, like, I'm scared. Like, no, like, okay, that's a child of God. Like, oh, I'm paying attention to my foot. Like, I'm looking at this crucifix. That is a way of kind of stepping out of the drama of battling our thoughts, which I feel like sometimes if we're trying to pray and we aren't using these kind of lower faculties of thought and sensations, we can kind of end up with these different things just keep bubbling up and we keep fighting against them. So I think what this brings up is something that's very important about prayer, and that it may be that Father Narciso's methods, where he talks about this, he almost has this hierarchy of different types of mental operations. It seems like as we're talking about the Psalms and these videos about prayer, maybe there's a kind of structure. We've talked about principles like balance and openness to God and focus and these things, but maybe there's actually an order of operations in this. Like, when you do a math example, they have PEMDAS or something as the order of operations. And maybe Father Narciso's method gives us the kind of PEMDAS thing. Like when we are praying, we should really have a foundation in conscious sensations, then use of the imagination, then acts of the will, then thoughts in the head, whatever hierarchy we want to make, then meaning, then acts of prayer, then acts of surrender. So whatever, it doesn't have to be that exact layout, but maybe it needs to have this foundation in conscious sensations, a foundation in thought. And I think it's very similar when we look at the order of Lectio Divina, this kind of natural progression of contemplation from reading to thinking about something, to praying about it, to contemplating. And it very, very much the Father Narciso's use of different faculties kind of walks up this ladder. And so I think that maybe when we're trying to enter into prayer, we're trying to understand how to pour out our hearts to God, and we're looking at all these different various methods that give us this ability to make all kinds of type of acts during mental prayer and use and redeem all these various techniques. We've talked about biospiritual focusing. We talked about Hawkins's letting go technique. We talked about all these different things, the TMS techniques, the street healer techniques, all these things could be brought into one paradigm of relationality that very much resembles like a Franciscan worldview. We could see all this stuff, this relational methods of talking to oneself and everything else, basically, in certain ways. We could see how all these acts could be integrated, but maybe we need that order of operations. And maybe that's what Father Narciso Irala gives us as we try to understand how to enter into this new life of balance. Maybe it's not only a balance of polarities, but almost like a pyramid. Like you have to have a foundation in conscious sensations. You have to have a foundation in thoughts. You have to, before you kind of go off into focused prayer and stuff like that. And so maybe it's healthy. Maybe that's a good thing to think about. And again, I think this is not rigid, but these are principles. These are principles of the ratios of things that help us understand what healthy things look like as we live a balanced interior life. And so I think these things can be very helpful. And one way I think we could think about this is maybe we could call this, I want to kind of close this with a thing I saw. I said there was some type of weird sign on a property I drove past today, which talked about leaving behind the realm of shadows. And I think in many ways, what we're trying to do is I've said this in other videos, is we're trying to leave behind the thought that we are a character in a play and realize that we are the actor. We have to leave behind the realm of shadows, of drama. And we do that by coming into the real world. If we practice Buddhist mindfulness, we just experience the sensation directly without experiencing it as gift. And so we then come out into nothing rather than coming out into being the actor in a real story, into the history of the Bible, into his story. We want to go into God's story, not into no story. And that's what Christian prayer does different. And we can think of this whole thing as a way of opening ourselves. We pay attention to conscious sensations because we are opening ourselves to the operation of God. In a way, there is a closedness to both the Buddhist meditations and to our ego identity. But opening prayer is so important. Because the thing is, we are open, we have to have an openness to sensations and an opening up of our hearts in dialogue. And so these things and all these different elements, we use all of the, we kind of open up and use all these different faculties of our mind. And so by using all these things, we really step into the life with God rather than the life that is isolated, whether that life is an isolated freedom or an isolated bondage. We don't want either of those things. But maybe as we use Irala's paradigm, we can see the good in all the techniques, and we also then know where to apply them. We know what to steal from the mindfulness things. We know what to steal from imaginal things. We know what to steal from thinking things. We know what to take from the AA techniques. We know what to take, and that's what I've always seen with Irala. And so maybe this is just really giving us an order of operations for our mind as we practice this opening prayer to leave behind the drama of being the character in the realm of shadows and to come into reality, which is that we are, and reality is not only the silence of perception, but it is the reality of gift and relationship. And that is what we are stepping into when we leave behind the realm of shadows and enter into the kingdom of God, which is within us. And that is this beautiful thing, this kingdom of God, the beloved community, the shalom, all these concepts that are interrelated, that this here and hereafter kingdom, both within us and to be fulfilled in the future. That is what we are stepping into, this relational world, this world in which we are the actor living a real life, not the character living an imaginary one or nobody at all. So this is the beautiful thing. And Father Narciso's method gives us paradigms for seeing all the good that's in all these different approaches to life, but bringing them into this relational context, bringing them into order, bringing them into ways that give us a stability and a peace as we see what God gives us around us and as we grow in praising him and loving him and praying to him in this orderly manner, supporting our spiritual life.